Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Black Men with Purpose podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time, it's a pleasure to have you with us. This is a safe space where we share our thoughts on a multitude of topics in hopes of helping Black males, young and not so young, overcome obstacles and challenges that can be hindrances to happiness, productivity, and success. We believe that through our experiences, successes, and failures, we can have some conversations that might help other Black males in their respective journeys through this thing we call life. On today's episode, which will be our final episode of season one of the Black Man with Purpose podcast, which we are very proud of, we're going to be talking about the importance of voting. So, who wants to get us started today?
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. I was waiting on somebody else to go, but that's okay. I'll do it. Um,
Way to
yeah,
volunteer yourself.
yeah, I volunteer myself. Yeah, I won't put you out there this time. But yeah, man, the importance of voting. I mean, when I think about it, I just think about how um, our ancestors had to, fight for the right to vote. You know, um, that was one of the many things they had to fight for. And even when we were given the right to vote, they still were um, they faced dogs, they faced mobs, to keep them from voting. So that tells you right there exactly how important voting is. Even today, when you really think about it, with the gerrymandering, with the changes in the voting rules, people being dropped from the voting rolls. If it wasn't important today, they wouldn't be trying so hard to keep us from voting. So for me, because the folks in my past, the folks in my lineage could not or had to fight so hard to have the ability to cast their ballots and have their voices heard, I feel it's up to me to carry on um, that that mantle, that role, and make sure no matter what that I get out and cast my ballot, because I know there were many people who died for that right. And far be it from me to let them have died in vain or have suffered in vain because they fought so hard. But that's it, real quick, in a nutshell, and I'll yield the floor. Y'all gonna make me volunteer somebody.
Well, I'll say this. I think that, obviously it may seem as though we are a little late, right? Because obviously, we just had an election and there are still a couple of runoffs to be had. So depending upon where you are listening to this, you may still have an opportunity to cast your ballot again. But I think that, and obviously, I agree with what you said, Ray. I think a lot of it does have to do with the fact that our ancestors fought so hard for us to even have the right to be able to do this, right? I mean, with the 14th Amendment, I'm sorry, the 15th Amendment um, coming into play in, what was it, 1870, with us having the right to vote. So many people fought and died for that. And even after the 15th Amendment, obviously we had Jim Crow and civil rights and all of that, and it still was a struggle to be able to vote. And even though the 15th Amendment supposedly granted uh, Black people the right to vote, it really was only for men. Women, period, no matter whether you were white or Black, didn't get the right to vote until like 1919. And even then, that was just for white women. It still took a little bit longer for Black women to gain the right to vote. But in any case, with that struggle, I think we owe it to them. We owe it to ourselves. But we can talk a little bit more about that. Where I was going with this was, I think that we always focus, and when I say we, I mean people in general, tend to focus on the major elections, right? The ones that take place every 2 to 4 years. And it's usually about the Senate, the House, about the presidency. But we often forsake mayor, city council, county executive, district attorney, school boards. Those things are every bit as important to get out and cast your ballot for,
Right.
because they affect you in the community. On some levels, they affect you even more because, yes, when we're talking about Congress and the presidency, that's affecting everyone on a large scale. But city council and those other things that I just named, we're talking about how it affects you right where you are in your own neighborhood, in your own community, right? The mayor is elected to take care of a specific city. City council have final votes when it comes to creating laws, approving city budgets, and you know how that affects you. County executive slash county commissioners, they have similar roles to the city council. District attorney, we're talking about a person who is kind of the chief law enforcer, right, for your
Mm-hmm.
community. They have the authority to investigate and bring issues to trial. They have the authority to be able to determine how certain offenses are going to be sentenced, that sort of thing. Then the school board, you're talking about people who are the link between the classroom and the community, right? They decide how and what students are learning regarding setting policies and curriculums and budgets and so forth and so on. So those sorts of things, which don't always happen every 2 to 4 years, some of them occur more often than that, but we don't pay attention to those sorts of things enough. I don't think that we get out and vote. And when I say we, I mean we as a people, Black people in general. I don't think we get out enough to vote even for the major elections. But
Mm.
it's even worse when it comes to those positions that I'm just talking about. And those are the things that impact you on a daily basis that really and truly matter. So I would encourage each of you to pay attention to those things, right? When you see that someone's up for election, or when you get your sample ballot, because I think most states hand out, or they email, or I'm sorry, mail sample ballots to you. Look and see who's out there. Research them for city council, for mayor, for county executive, for district attorney, for school board, all those things. Look and see who's up there, right, for election, and vote, because your vote absolutely matters. So
Right. And even with that, Kevin, I'm sorry, real quick, John. Even with that, it's not just the individuals we're voting for. It's your county laws, your property taxes. If they're going to
mhm.
put millage in on for schools and things of that nature. So that it's you're absolutely right. It's definitely important. I'm sorry, John. Didn't mean to jump in front of you, bro.
I know, right? You always get your turn. Then, well, let me jump back in and add. No, that's a beautiful thing that we sparked that idea. And I wanted to jump in before Rob because I love his ability to kind of put a cap on our
I
thoughts.
agree.
So I wanted to
Yeah.
give him that opportunity. So I definitely want to jump in. But no, I absolutely agree. I mean, when you think about politics, it's the activities that are associated with the governance of your country, your state, your city, and depending on the state, you like Virginia, we're a commonwealth. So, you got different kind of principalities when it comes to that. So I think voting is very important. And I can kind of see why you said this episode was going to go quick, because it's almost like each of us has that complete thought about the process and why it's important, going from the top down to the bottom to what impacts us. But it's very important because I think the idea that politics doesn't touch us is one of the fallacies.
Yeah.
Just going to get a permit to throw a block party is a political action. Um, driver's license, all of these things. And y'all talked about all of the governance offices, but depending on where you live, you elect your sheriff, you
Yep.
elect your law enforcement officers, and so it's very important, it's very vital to be active. And I think we'll probably spring off onto this, but what I really think is important is when we talk about, well, the national elections don't impact me. I always think about how President Obama got his start, locally in Chicago working. And, he
Yeah.
was the young senator out there that caught the attention of the nation with the amazing speech he gave. And when we're more active voting locally and on the state level, and, because like me, I got a lot of buddies. From where I'm from, it's District 2 of San Antonio. And, every year I start seeing, well, I used to see people that I actually knew that would be running for that. And when we get involved at that level, And I've seen some people come from our district and go to the state level and become get notoriety for that. When we get involved at that level, then we start to see people we recognize at
Absolutely.
the national level. So it is very important for us to not only get active, but to be paying attention, because I might be like, I don't know who this Jack Jenkins is, and then Kev be like, hey, he's from Newark. You know what I'm saying? I went to school with his brother, this, that, and that. He's quality dude, So it's very important for us to be engaged.
Yeah. And to that point, it's funny, and I don't know that, I don't think that you even know this, but it's so ironic that you said that, because I think about Dupree Kelly, who most may know as Do It All, right, from Lords of the Underground. He and I went to high school together, and he is now a councilman in Newark, right, in his district in Newark. And so you are, I mean, man, you hit
Me
the
and
nail on
Marvin
the
talked
head with
about
that,
that too last week.
so. Uh, turn it over to you, Brother Rod.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. So all great points, and just kind of touching on what Ray said. I do think that there is a lot to the fact that voting is a right that our ancestors didn't necessarily have. Uh, so I think should definitely be guarded. Uh, then also, I think it's incumbent upon the people of this country, irrespective of race and religion and ethnicity, gender, uh, to exercise the rights that we're given, right? Uh, I think you don't necessarily understand how important it is uh, unless maybe you had the right and lost it. So I think about, people with a federal record after being incarcerated and not having necessarily the right to vote coming out. So just think about having that right and then losing it at some point. It's like you're existing within a community of people, but you can't necessarily share the same rights that they have, and you become then a standby, a bystander. I'm sorry, standby, a bystander. Uh, and like you said, there's so many things that are impacted by uh, voting, and and I know people probably have a lot of reasons for why they don't vote. Maybe they want to live off the grid and don't want anyone to know their name. So, so even with that though, then they're subject to what everyone else decides for them. And so that's the biggest thing, just to be part of the process, to engage in that process. Because only then can you really start to address the things that you might not like about the process, right? You have to have some skin in the game. I think about things like, political jobs or jobs as politicians where they meant to be career jobs, uh, turned into that way, for a lot of people. But no, so if you feel some sort of way about term limits, what do you do about it? Well, it starts with you getting involved in the process, you know, and then actually being okay with the responsibility that comes along with that right, whether that's jury duty, you know, you might get involved in, as Kevin said, the local elections are really the big, we're getting involved in that, you know. So, so I would say uh, we all understand the importance of voting. We all understand the systems that we have here. but I certainly continue to encourage young people to get involved. And I would just tell you a quick story here in the local area, up in Hayes County. They recently had a young man. He 1 year removed from high school, so he's 19. Last year, he was a senior in high school. This year, he's the county clerk.
Wow.
Beat out a lady with 30 years of experience and had been doing the job for years. This is the importance of voting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? Because what people wanted was something different. Right? So Hayes County had a huge backup in court cases. And so they saw that as their number one issue and thought that they needed someone different. Even though it's someone who's 19, hadn't necessarily supervised anyone in his life, but he has a perspective, a fresh perspective, I would say, on trying to address the issues of those in that community. And that's really what it's about, you know. So if you consider yourself a problem solver, or you want to roll up your sleeves and get involved in helping to solve problems, you know, getting involved and engaged in that process is a great way to do it. And it starts with, you know, honoring your, you know, responsibility to vote for you, for whoever. You know, so with that, I see we have brother B.
Yeah.
So I will yield the floor.
And B, give me one quick second. I just want to, before I forget this, I was just thinking that, and again, thinking about what Ray was saying regarding what our ancestors, right, had to go through to even get us to this point. And my wife and I were just at the Legacy Museum in Atlanta. Oh, I'm sorry, in Montgomery, Alabama. And they had these sheets that contained the questions, right? And as you all know, back in the day, they had literacy tests, right? Where if you were Black, in order to be able to vote, you had to take these literacy tests and you had these questions you had to answer. So, of course, because of all of the years of oppression and all that, and not even being able to, not even being granted the right to be able to read and write, right? So, for many, of course, they're not going to pass a literacy test. But even for the ones who maybe could read or write, I just want to look. I pulled out, or had my wife hand me these three, or these sheets that we pulled. In the list of questions, I'm not even going to read all of them. I'm just going to read three of the questions that our ancestors were asked, right, in order to be able to get in and be able to vote, whether you could read or not. How many jelly beans are in a jar in front of you? Right? And I'm talking hundreds of jelly beans. You can't look, you can't do anything. You just have to be able to tell them what it is. How many bubbles are in a bar of soap? How many windows can be counted at the White House in Washington, D.C.? And finally, how many seeds are in a watermelon? These are legit questions that were being asked of our ancestors just to be able to get in and be able to vote. Are you kidding me? Right? So the fact that we have the ability to be able to vote now based upon them going through what they went through, man, I think it's such a cop out to say I'm not going to vote because my vote doesn't count. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, B. Can't hear you, bro.
Can y'all hear me now?
Now we got you.
Okay, I apologize for running late. See what happens when you're late, stuff ain't working right. But yeah, the importance of voting. I'm sorry I missed whatever's been discussed, but just going back to what Kevin was saying, to me it's personal because hey, my grandfather was one of those people that couldn't read or write, had to sign with an X. So I take it personal. Even with my mom used to tell me she grew up in the South. My grandfather grew up in the South, and one of my uncles marched with Dr. King, and my mom, was one of those kids that snuck out for marches, and she still got she had a scar on her leg. She used to tell us about how she tried to climb over a fence to get away from the dogs, that the Bull Connor was sitting the dogs on people, right? And so when you think about those type of things, we're so far removed from that because so much of that information is being removed from our history lessons, right? So a lot of our kids don't understand that. But even with that being said, I think we have to understand that voting has nothing to do with you in a sense. And a lot of times people is like, well, my vote matters. It does matter, but your votes today is going to impact the generations after you. And so I say, hey, if you don't vote for yourself, then vote for your nieces and nephews. Vote for the kids that live in your neighborhood. Vote for your own children. Because when you look at things, how laws are enacted, some things do happen right away, but some laws don't take effect for a couple of years. And then they really don't impact you until 10, 12 years later. Just look at how we have the makeup of the Supreme Court now. The makeup of the Supreme Court now started with the first midterm for Obama. And so because of that, because of how people were upset and, he lost so many seats in his first midterm because we were just so happy that we had somebody that looked like us in the White House. Everybody else, the GOP and everybody else, they was playing a long game. We didn't, we was happy about the White House. They're like, y'all can have that. It's the Congress that makes the laws. So y'all can have that because if we win the House and the Senate, guess what we can do? We can put people in judges and Supreme Court, guess what, that think like us, that's going to be holding you all, captive and holding you back from achieving what you want to achieve. So when I just look at it that way, is that if you don't think about nothing else, it may not impact you. You may have enough money that no matter who's in White House, right? It's not whatever laws they impact or whatever laws they create. It's not going to impact you because you got enough money. But what about the people that don't have the money? The people that are struggling for health care? That your vote does matter. And, I was reading an article earlier today about how much the number of African Americans that now have registered, almost 51% of eligible voters are African Americans now. So we do play a significant role. So that's all I want to share is that your vote does matter, but it really impacts the generations that are coming after you.
Man, B was a ringer. Kept him on the sideline and brought him in for a big hit.
Okay.
Good stuff, B. Nah, seriously, that was good stuff.
And it's funny when Byron was talking about that, man. I was just sitting here thinking about, and I actually wrote this down earlier, how important is voting. Man, all you got to do is look no further than Louisiana. Here it is in 2022, and the voters rejected the ballot to abolish slavery and indentured servitude. In 2022, there is still slavery on the books, even though it was abolished nationwide. It's still a state law where they can institute slavery or indentured servitude as punishment for a crime. But people don't think their votes don't count. I call BS. It counts because if people had paid attention to that, here it is, a midterm election. If you had paid attention to that, I would hope that most Black folks or all Black folks would have gotten out there and voted against that measure, so they could abolish slavery and indentured servitude. But apparently, it wasn't important enough to do that. And I call BS. Folks need to be ashamed of themselves. They need to be ashamed of themselves. And I thought about the Trevor Noah skit the other day. Here it is. They got somebody. He had somebody standing on basically in Mississippi across the state line talking about, I'm not going over there because I actually feel safer in Mississippi. And I never thought I'd say that in 2022. I feel safer in Mississippi than going into Louisiana because they still allow slavery. But I yield the floor, fellas. Okay, who next?
I mean, it's telling when you have a state like, and I don't want to obviously go down a rabbit hole on this because we're talking about the importance of voting, but it's telling when you have a state like Mississippi, speaking of, who didn't even ratify. Obviously, we know the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. Well, except in the case of incarceration, but the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1865, Mississippi didn't actually ratify the 13th Amendment until 1995. So that's telling when you talk about some of these areas in the South and what they do to try to maintain the status quo regarding things like that. So and voter rights and all that sort of thing. And we know that the Republicans are so hell bent on voter suppression, not because of voter fraud, but because of voter turnout. That's really what it's about. It has nothing to do with voter fraud because that doesn't exist. So yeah, absolutely. We need to exercise our right to vote. So,
and and in doing so, really don't forget the fact that there are people who are not people of color that have supported, our right to vote. And it's because of those courageous people that a lot of things have moved forward in this country. Even though there are a lot of people that would have loved, to own slaves even today, and things of that nature. But there were a lot of people that actually saw people of color, particularly African Americans, as human beings, right? And not necessarily the animals that were made out to be. So for that purpose alone, also just to one, honor, ancestors that did not have that right. And then also, salute those who were in the majority at the time that were willing to stand up and assist in ways that they could, So I think, we kind of have an obligation to continue to pay it forward in ways that we can, whether that's through service, whether that's through just voting. But, I would just, encourage, especially young people, to look for ways to pay it forward. As you enjoy the freedoms that you have here, knowing that, people died for you to have that freedom, right? You always heard freedom is not free. Yeah. Someone had to pay that price. And so for that reason, we continue to look for ways to pay it forward. So I highly encourage everyone, just exercise your right to vote, even in elections that you think don't matter. Do a little research, do a little reading, and find out what is really going on within your community, whether it's the school board or the city council, and what do those people actually believe in? Does it support your values? And then vote your conscience, irrespective of party. Because I would tell you, sometimes things get lost in this party affiliation as well. And then also if you look at, what I know with my ancestors, what their beliefs were from an economical point of view was different than what they believed from a moral point of view. Yeah. And they crossed party lines as far as political parties were concerned, so they had to make hard choices, and that's why it's such a huge responsibility. And we need to exercise our right to do so. And then once they get elected, you got to participate in the process. It's like you elect me to be anything because how I campaign may not necessarily be how I govern, right? So I
Absolutely.
might tell you anything to get your vote.
Mhm.
And then once I get in there, I'm gonna do whatever I want to support my own
Right.
agenda
Right.
and
Right.
not necessarily yours.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and the way that you combat that is that you be involved in that. Go visit that local office of that congressman that you voted for to see what they're doing about the things that you believe are a priority, you know? So, and I would say especially true for young people that have a bunch of social media followers, right? Because they understand that, right? If you have a voice or a platform and you can speak truth about some things, now you'll get their attention. So use the platform that you have available to you, but exercise your right to vote for sure. Thanks.
Definitely exercise your right to vote and know the candidates. That's how school teachers end up being governors. In Florida, that's what DeSantis used to be, a school teacher. Now he the governor. So it's like y'all got to know the candidate.
Yeah.
And I know y'all mentioned the local elections, but
Yep.
yeah, man. I mean, vote for your school board. Vote for the dog catcher. I'm like, I ain't got no dog, but vote for the dog catcher. Just so you could just be an informed citizen. I mean, because hey, if you don't like the way the police chief, guess what? Guess who appoints the police chief? The people on the city council. So so it does help. And I know people have come from a position where they've been frustrated about the process, but I think the opportunity is there. And like Rob was saying, if we educate the young people about the process, if we can make a change. But people you can't get frustrated, because I mean, some of us, if we had to go through what some of our ancestors had to go through, we would have quit a long time ago. Because I know right now I couldn't have been no slave. I'm just tell you that right now. we they would have had to cut off my foot and everything else by now. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, some of us, I mean, and really, all we got to do is stand in line maybe for a couple hours. Now they're making it so easy you can get your ballot, by mail. So I mean, compared to what we talked about, what our ancestors went through, what we have to go through now is nothing. Stay in line a couple hours, make a vote, make a change. So
Yeah, but like Kev says, so yeah, a couple hours, but it's for those who can't afford to take those couple hours off from work, right? But also live in a place where they won't extend the time where you can vote, So, and just major shout out to the NBA for having no game
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
last
Absolutely.
Tuesday, and those are the types of things that you need, and you need, those people, those institutions that can make a difference to do so. All the messages that the NFL put out, because it's only about fairness and being involved in the process. So you want to do everything you can to help people be involved in the process,
Right.
unless, like Kev said, you recognize that, well, voter suppression may be the only way we have a chance to get these folks in, whether they be election deniers or whomever, So be involved in that process, and then follow up with, engaging with those folks that get elected, saying, I have the list of everything you said was important to you, which is why I voted for you. But after 6 months, I've never even seen it as part of any of your agendas, or better yet, I looked at your voting record.
Right.
All that's public information. So, but you have to be engaged in the process,
And speaking to what both B and Rod were talking about, B talked about knowing who's on the ballot, and I think I mentioned that earlier too, about kind of researching and knowing. who's on the ballot. And then Rod was talking about, this party line voting thing and how, you know, you can't just, well, I shouldn't say you can't, but in my humble opinion, I don't think you should just straight party line vote without at least doing your research, finding out
Right.
who's there. And now, if it turns out that everybody that is kind of in line with your thought processes and your morals and your values, if they all turn out to be independents, if they all turned out to be Democrats, whatever the case is, then it is what it is. But don't just simply go out there and say, well, I'm voting Democrat and that's it, without looking at who's on the ballot, who's running, what their voting record looks like. All those sorts of things, they matter. Do your research, do your due diligence, find out who's running for these offices before you just flat out say, I'm just voting for this person simply because they are of this particular party. So I think those are definitely great points by both of you, Rod and B.
I'll just say that I don't know if or when the last time I voted straight down a party line for that very reason, you know. But it requires you, like you said, Kev, to do your due diligence. Right.
It's important for sure. And also too, I don't know who else wants to go, and I'm sorry, I know I keep jumping in, but I wanted to also just kind of briefly touch on something Rod said a few minutes back too, when he talked about kind of regardless of race and all those sorts of things. And I want to say that it's a little bit off topic, but obviously our podcast is called Black Men with Purpose Podcast, right? And even in the beginning of every episode, I talk about how we're speaking mostly, our target audience is it's Black men, and it's young Black men. But that does not mean we're here to bash white people or anybody who doesn't look like us. That's not what we're here for. I wholeheartedly recognize the fact that um we wouldn't be where we are without other people, right? We would not have granted, as Black people throughout our history, in order for us to get where we've gotten, we've certainly had to be the forerunner. We've had to be the forebearers of all that, right? We've had to kind of lead the charge and all of that. But at every turn, we've had others helping us out. I mean,
Absolutely.
look no further than the Underground Railroad, right? There's no way in the world the Underground Railroad would have ever been successful without white people. Period.
Right.
Period. So I thought that was a good point that Rob brought up, and I just kind of wanted to put that out there. I don't want anybody to think that, oh well, Black men with purpose. They, no, it's yes. Is that our target audience? Are we here to try to help Black men? Absolutely, that's what we're here for. But we're not here to bash anybody else. So I just felt the need to kind of put that out there.
Well, I mean, Maryland was a perfect example of people of color on the ballot. I didn't go down the party line, but I went down the color line. Everybody on the ballot was black. Well, I ain't have no choice. So, but no, I hear what you're saying though, man. I'm just making light of it. But but again, again, you see how this can help get people that not only look like us, but people who really care about the issues get to these positions. So, I just happen to be, y'all know, y'all been here before, PG just happened to be one of the few counties in the country where you can put, you got a Black judge on the ballot, you got a governor on the ballot. This is the second or third gubernatorial race where we have somebody of color on the ballot in the state of Maryland. Now they didn't win, but again, it just shows you, guess what? Our voting can make a difference in our communities, because guess what? Before these guys, with the exception of Westmore, but the other people, Rashawn Baker, these guys served in their local government, and and were able to rise to these positions of being on the ballot. So it does. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. However, you can see consistent every 2 years, every 4 years that you get out there and you make an effort to be part of that community, you can be effective in making changes in what you want to see happen in your community.
I think it's amazing too that I'm so happy for Westmore that he even, I mean, man, it says something when in the history of what are we talking about, 246 years of governors being elected, and he's only the third black governor in the
The
history of
third.
this country.
Wow.
You know, that's man, that's wow. The magnitude of that when you think about it is just wild to me.
Yeah.
What else we got, fellas? Well, if we have nothing else to mention regarding voting rights, I want to take the time to say that, and I've already mentioned that I know that, you know, this is our final episode of season one, which I'm very proud of, and I know that you all are as well. Um, and so, you know, I know we're coming up on the holidays, and well, we're in the middle of the holiday season now, I guess, and we won't be returning until the new year. So I think it's so important to, life is short, right? And I don't mean to say that to be morbid, but it just is, right? And I think we all recognize how short life is. And while we should always appreciate and be gracious and give gratitude for what we have and for our loved ones and things like that, I love the fact that, you know, the holiday season almost forces you in some ways, right, to think of it in those terms, right, and to be gracious for the things that you have, the things that you've accomplished in life, for your family, for your friends, so forth and so on. So I would encourage each and every one of you out there to do that, right? To take the time to really, you know, love on your family, right? And express gratitude to your family, to your friends, to God or whoever it is that you know, whoever it is you call God, right? And be thankful for what you have been given in this life. I think that is so important. And as we approach the new year, I also think that this is a great time to look back on this year, right? What went well? What didn't go so well for you personally, professionally? Dwell on it, write it down, right? Think about what you want to continue on into the new year based upon what went well, what you want to improve on, what you want to change based upon things that didn't go so well. This is a great time of year to do that, to reflect essentially and prepare. Reflect on this year and prep for the year coming to make it a successful one. So I'll turn it over to you all.
Wow, Kevin, it's funny that you talked about self-reflection, because that's one of the things that I would encourage everybody to do, is to take a look inside, because there are there's always room for us to improve ourselves. So the hardest thing to do is to look inside and say, okay, well, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And then to acknowledge what you actually did wrong, and then try and make corrections to it. So I just wanted to second that motion. Um, I would like to say to everyone, you know, especially with the holiday seasons coming up, and since we were talking about voting, those of you in Georgia, you got this doggone this runoff coming up in December. Please, even though I'm not a Georgian, but please go cast that ballot for Raphael Warnock, because I've heard dogs speak better than Herschel Walker. I just don't understand. Well, the people need someone that's actually going to go fight for them instead of having a yes man. And in my humble opinion, that is nothing more than what Herschel Walker is going to be, is a yes man. He's going to go along with whatever the Republican Party says, and he's going to pull out his badge and proclaim his membership to the FBI and say, you know, I'm here for y'all, you know. So, but but on a serious note, with the holiday seasons coming up, I would like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, happy Kwanzaa, and a happy New Year. And I would ask everyone to please pray for all of our men and women and their families. Those in uniform. Pray for our men and women in uniform and their families who are standing watch while we're with our loved ones. They're away from there. So please keep them and their families in your prayers and pray for their safety as well, especially those that are in harm's way. And with that, I yield the floor.
Let me go, since Dr. V looked like he got that look on his face like he finna close. He gonna shut it down. Yeah, that look like I'm gonna shut this down. No, so we know the whirlwind that we've been on, and man, cheers to us for a 12 season or a 12 episode season 1. Cheers to us. Kudos for us
Absolutely.
sticking with it. Statistics say 90% of podcasts don't get past episode 3. So kudos to us, Black Men with Purpose. We're coming back season 2, bigger and better.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
coming with the heat. But we see the trajectory of the world and everything. So I would definitely say take some time to unplug from the matrix, because every time you turn around, it's some important issue. It was elections. Before elections, it was, athletes and entertainers, this, that, and the third. And before that, it was something else. And if you look through the year, it's something else. But if you unplug and you take time to value the people in your life and the things that are going good, and take some time to just really get really clear on what your reality really is, and you'll find out, that life is a lot better than we realize if we can stay unplugged from all this other stuff. There's a couple of things that I've been studying and I was checking out, and I just kind of want to leave them with all of you. But it's one that's called the Mean World Syndrome, and basically what it states is that the news exists to get our attention, so they've got to use shock value to get our attention, but it doesn't actually precisely reflect what life is really like. So, but because it's all we see, we think that the world is really like that. So that's why I say, take that time to unplug. Understand Sayers' law, which just says that the lower the stakes, the more vicious the politics are. So, when we're talking about culture wars or who should be doing this, that, and the other, it's life or death. But when you look at real conflict like nuclear, war, people tend to be more civil. So just remember that people sometimes take minor issues and make them way too important. And then the principle of least effort. Human behavior tends to favor the path of least resistance. We all know that. So a lot of times people will just accept the first idea that comes to their mind and, get their info from the first relevant search engine. So it makes it easy to predict behavior, but it's important for us to make sure that we're getting a better read on what's going on. So during this holiday season, just realize life is actually better than outlets would like us to believe. People are better than, they would like for us to believe. We can be more civil. It's just sometimes we take these small disagreements and we go too far with them. And just my personal, the path of least resistance is not always the best path. Sometimes it is, but not always. So that's all I got.
I like everything you're saying about being prepared and just enjoying life and taking a moment just to unplug, but really just value where you are in life. I've had this new saying since I had my stroke. I mean, I have no justifiable complaints. I'm like, we all can complain about something, but when you think about it, is it really justifiable? And when you think about it, like, nope, because guess what? I got another chance in life to make changes, to make things better. So, I would say, hey, if you got beef with somebody, pick up the phone, and even if it ain't your fault, hey, I apologize. You know what I'm saying? Because life is too short. Just hey, it's not my fault. Apologize. And just get it off you. Just get it off me. At this point, guess what? It's not on me. It's on you. What Mama used to say. God not gonna hold you accountable for what people do to you, but He's gonna hold you accountable what you do to other people. So you know, your best way to try to clear the air, so it's not on you. But I appreciate you guys allowing me to come on this ride with you for this first season. You know, y'all could have kicked me off the bus a couple of episodes ago, but I appreciate y'all letting me stay on the bus. You know, next year I'll do a better job of carrying the team bags on the bus. You know what I'm saying? You know, y'all the superstars, so I'm gonna just carry the bags for y'all. You know, but I appreciate you fellas. You know, a lot of friendship here. You know, a lot of ups and downs, but you know, through it all, I think what we collectively show that if you can persevere, whatever your options are, whatever things the obstacles, the doors that's closed in your face, guess what? You can still arrive on top. So I appreciate you guys so much. So thank you.
Preach.
And enjoy your holidays with your family and friends and your loved ones. I ain't trying to preach today, but if you want to send an offering, Cash App is no, just kidding.
I'm gonna thump that offering plate. Tink.
Yeah. So I just want to thank you as well, you know, for letting me come along for the ride. I mean, literally, you know, the least technical, as you can tell. But I enjoyed it, you know, and I certainly have always, you know, learned a lot from our engagement, and appreciate that, you know, and as I've gotten older, I think I've learned how to apply the correct value on the friendships and the brotherhood, you know. So just to kind of piggyback off of what John was saying, you know, there is, you know, a lot of shock value to the media, and you know, and what they want us to intake. So the whole idea of unplugging, I certainly embrace that and encourage it, you know, so that you can decide for yourself, you know, what you really value and hold near and dear to your heart. And then that's where you spend your time, energy, and resources, you know, kind of plain and simple, you know. And I would tell you, you know, we talked about this, I believe it was at the last episode about older people in this country. And that's just, you know, that will not leave me. And so I am still, like, every day looking at some way to be able to impact that more positively, because I know that that's where we're all headed if God grant us the mercy to live that long. And then what kind of life will you have then, right? You know, I've heard people talk about, you know, not wanting to grow old in this country, just because of the way that they've seen, you know, older people treated. But I offer the idea of group economics, you know, as a way to pool collective resources to get after things that you and some of your allies value, you know. And I think a lot of people, a lot of communities do that for sure. And I think we need to take a real hard look at that, you know, because I do believe that we have enough within us to solve most of our own problems, you know, whether it's a community of people, whether it's a race of people, whatever the case might be, you know. So start looking for ways to solve problems, and looking for like-minded people to help you get there. So I do want to give just a huge shout out to Brother John Singletary for making this
Yes, sir.
happen. You know, I mean, he's highly talented, obviously, but I certainly do appreciate it because I know I wouldn't have been able to do it. Let me just say that. So, but I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think that it serves as an example for how you're stronger as a group when you come together collectively and collaborate and use, those combined talents and gifts to pursue things that you have like-mindedness about. So, so thank you for that, and to all of you for letting me come along on the ride, being, the old guy. That's what OG stands for. I certainly appreciate it. And quite honestly, I have learned and grown to appreciate what comes along with that. The obligation, especially the obligation to give back, to share my story in ways that it can help other people, to provide hope, knowing that you can overcome anything if you just believe and are willing to push forward, put in the effort. So, but thank you guys. I will leave it at that, and turn it back over to Brother Kevin to get us out of here.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And certainly be on the lookout for our social media. We'll let you know when season 2 is coming. Check us out on Instagram as well as on Facebook. Again, like I said, we will let you know when season 2 is on the horizon, and we'll make sure that we try to find a way to hit Rod on his pager to let him know what we're doing for season 2. So we
dang, come on, pager.
I didn't even know Sky Pager still existed.
Yeah. And not the 911 call either.
Well, much love to y'all, fellas, and it's been a great season 1. I'm very much looking forward to doing season 2 with each of you. And so with that, we want to thank each of you for taking the time to join us, not only tonight, but in this first season. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a quote by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who in a 1957 speech titled "Give Us the Ballot," spoke bluntly about the need for equal voting rights, saying, "So long as I do not firmly and irrevocably possess the right to vote, I do not possess myself. I cannot make up my mind. It is made up for me. I cannot live as a democratic citizen, observing the laws I have helped to enact. I can only submit to the edict of others." Until 2023, peace.
All right. Hey, Victor.